When it comes to government cover-ups, nothing sets off the imaginary storm cloud over my head faster than saying allegedly, or the classic can't confirm, can't deny. It's been almost a year now that I've been doing deep dives into what they cover up, and the more I learn, the more I'm infuriated. So, question for you, what is the most shocking government secret you've ever heard? Stay tuned until the end of today for one that boggled my mind the most, and for another edition of comment section shoutouts, and let's get going before I hiss like a tea kettle. The US military once funded a flying saucer program. Yeah, you heard me right. While the public has always been fascinated with the government's investigation of UFOs, the fact that the military once funded the design of its own flying saucers hasn't been made public until about the last 10 years. The Avro Canada VZ-9 Avro car was a VTOL aircraft developed by Avro Canada as part of a secret US military project carried out in the early years of the Cold War. The Avro car intended to exploit the Coanda effect to provide lift and thrust from a single turborotor, blowing exhaust out of the rim of the disc-shaped aircraft. In the air, it would have resembled a flying saucer. Fascinating. So you're telling me the government had access to UFO tech knowledge and wanted to build their own without telling anybody? Am I shocked? Absolutely not. More like it's just something to add to the evidence files of why we really can't trust the government when it comes to stuff like this. Originally designed as a fighter-like aircraft capable of very high speeds and altitudes, the project was repeatedly scaled back over time, and the US Air Force eventually abandoned it. Development was then taken up by the US Army for a tactical combat sort of situation, a sort of high-performance helicopter to combat Soviet weapon planes. In flight testing, the Avro car proved to have unresolved thrust and stability problems that limited it to a degraded low-performance flight envelope. Subsequently, the project was completely cancelled in September of 1961. I wonder if it was a lack of element 115, or stabilized element 150. Throughout the history of the program, the project was referred to by a number of different names. Avro referred to the efforts as Project Y, with individual vehicles known as Spade and Omega. Project Y2 was the one funded by the US Air Force, who referred to it as WS-606A, Project 1794, and Project Silverbug. When the US Army joined the efforts, it took on its final name, Avro Car, and the designation VZ-9, part of the US Army's VTOL projects in the VZ series. The first Avro Car, SN587055, after tethered testing, became the wind tunnel test model at NASA Ames, where it remained in storage from 1961 until '66, when it was donated to the National Air and Space Museum in Suitland, Maryland. The area continued gathering dust for about the next 40 years, and the museum finally scheduled it for restoration and display at their newly constructed Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center. Now the Avro car has been loaned to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, and I think it arrived in about November of '07. After a full restoration, which included fabrication of both mixing plexiglass bubbles, it was put on display in June of '08 in the museum's Cold War Gallery. Now it has since been moved to the Presidential Aircraft Gallery, and in 2016 the Avro car was moved to the museum's Research and Development Gallery in its new fourth hangar. The thing's been shuffled around a little bit. A full-scale replica of the Avro car was prepared for the 2002 production, Avro Car, Saucer Secrets from the Past, and now resides as an exhibit at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada, over in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Maybe I'll take a trip someday. Alrighty folks, raise your hands now if you've ever owned an iPod. Personally, I've owned 2 iPod Touch models in my life. The original had the metal back, I covered it with a pink gel case, and it was the first thing I bought with my babysitting money. Sadly, its battery wasn't fantastic, but I still have it and I can still power it up. It has all my old games that were discontinued from the Apple Store, still loaded, such as Surviving High School and my ultimate favorite, Cause of Death. May that game rest in peace, it was too good for this world. We got like episodes every week, it was fantastic. Okay, I promise this was all on topic. According to former Apple software engineer David Shayer, the tech company worked with the US Department of Energy on a covert project back in '05. The special iPod was allegedly supposed to act as a Geiger counter by testing radiation levels in the air, to be shared amongst people who needed to know that information. You could walk around the city, casually listening to your tunes or recording evidence of radioactivity while scanning for smuggled or stolen uranium, for instance, or evidence of a dirty explosive development program with no chance that the press or public would get wind of what was happening. This is all according to the spokesman. So pardon me, the government was casually using an iPod to randomly test for radioactive matter? Why was there a reason to test for such matter? What was going on in the air? Should I be more concerned about random kaboom events happening in my day-to-day life? Right now, I just exit a subway or elevator if I see somebody with an e-bike on, because I've heard way too many accidents with those in enclosed areas, but like, should I be more concerned about stuff in the air? Fun fact about me, I have a really bad habit of losing my belongings, because when it comes to my ADHD, out of sight, out of mind, really rings true. I'm trying to think right now what was the most devastating thing I've lost over the years. I also forget that. So I think it's just the amount of times that I've lost my transit pass and had to replace it. I'm not gonna say how many times, but it's a little silly. So something the government doesn't want you to know is that the United States and India came together for a joint mission in the 1960s that, if successful, would monitor China's nuclear development. This covert collaboration unfolded in a geopolitical chessboard where the Cold War tensions played out with nuclear undertones. The goal was to install radioactive isotope Pu-238 powered sensors, but hazardous conditions forced the team to evacuate the Himalayas before the installation was complete. When they returned, the sensors had vanished. Gone. Poof. One of the greatest magic tricks ever, if you ask me. Nobody has tracked down the plutonium devices, but locals believe they are still active in the area and are responsible for melting mountain caps that are causing massive floods. I'm sorry, I need to back up here. We know of random devices hanging out in the mountains that are actively causing global warming problems, and nobody's really doing anything to try and fix that. I'm over here mourning disposable plastic bags and straws because of how convenient they were, but we have these things causing floods and it's just a blip in an article? Come on! Okay, imagine a weapon that couldn't be traced to the attacker. So like every serial killer's dream ever. That was the idea behind the CIA's past attempt at weaponizing lightning, according to a declassified document from 1967. So in the late 60s, an unknown scientist proposed the service behind using lightning strikes as a weapon that would leave behind little or no evidence, making it difficult to identify the US government as the perpetrator. The pitch, which Forbes discovered in declassified CIA files, involved using artificial leaders of thin metal wires to cause discharges to occur when and where they desired them. The wires, a few thousands of an inch in diameter, would unfurl from aircrafts or rockets launched into the atmosphere. Then, once lightning occurred, it would be drawn to the metal wire and strike the ground where the wire terminated. The idea seemed to be that the wire would be close enough to fry whoever the CIA wanted to assassinate with 3 million volts of electricity. If that isn't terrifying to you, it damn well should be, because that's terrifying to me. There were some interesting upsides to the weapon unique to using natural weather phenomena. For one, it was cheap, since lightning is practically free, and secondly, it left behind, there was no really traces. No casings, missile fuselages, other telltale signs of state-sponsored assassination. Sorry, just sponsored assassination. I'm thinking of all the different commercials. It makes me laugh. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the chances of being struck by lightning are only 1 in 500,000, and an observer would likely believe the target was simply a victim of bad luck. Obviously, there's a couple of problems with using lightning as a weapon. The CIA can only use it during lightning storms, and the lightning attracting wire would have to stay close enough to the target to be lethal. Everything would need to line up just right for the assassination to take place. Pardon me, that is some comic book supervillain weaponry ideology right there. While the invention turned out to be functional, the agency never fulfilled the program. Allegedly. There was nothing 1950s and 60s America loved more than dropping big nuclear devices and watching them go kaboom. From a plan to nuke Alaska, which could still happen, to actually nuking space, America wasn't shy about seeing some scenery and thinking, I'm gonna put a mushroom cloud right there. But in these early days of nuclear weaponry, we still didn't really know the effects these nuclear tests had on the human body. I've talked a lot about nuclear stuff today. It's kinda scary. We did have estimates on how much radioactive strontium produced by tests would kill a person, but the exact effects of fallout on humans and human tissue were basically unknown and unstudied. And what we did know about levels of strontium-90 worried scientists at the time. And yet, the world continued to test weapons. Project Sunshine was a series of research studies that began in 1953 to figure out the impact of radioactive fallout on the world's population. The project was initially kept secret, and only became known publicly in 1956. Commissioned jointly by the United States Atomic Energy Commission and USAF Project RAND, Sunshine sought to examine the long-term effects of nuclear radiation on the biosphere due to repeated nuclear detonations of increasing yields. With the conclusion from Project Gabriel that radioactive isotope SR90 represented the most serious threat to human health from nuclear fallout, Project Sunshine sought to measure the global dispersion of SR90 by measuring its concentration in the tissues and bones of the dead. Of particular interest? Tissue from young folks, whose developing bones have the highest propensity to accumulate SR90, and ergo, the highest susceptibility to radiation damage. It was in this environment that scientists at the Sunshine Conference, ergo the influence on the name, a conference that looked at the long-term effect of atomic weapons, argued in favor of sampling strontium fallout in humans to determine whether potentially damaging levels of it were present in different populations. So in 1955, there was a meeting of the Atomic Energy Commission, which came up with some of the specifics of the testing and urged researchers to use their own contacts to discreetly, that's the key word here, get a hold of tissue and bone samples without disclosing the nature of the research being conducted. Also, no getting the permission of the deceased. Dr. Willard Libby said in the transcript of that meeting, which was only released to the public in 1995, that it was a matter of prime importance to get them, and particularly in the young age group. So, human samples are of prime importance, and if anybody knows how to do a good job of body snatching, they will really be serving their country. Sunshine recruited a worldwide network of agents to find recently deceased little ones and then take samples and even limbs that were collected without notification or permission. Only about 6,000 corpses from 26 bone collection sites around the world were shipped under top secret conditions to the project's headquarters in Chicago and to a satellite research office at Columbia University in New York. In one particularly grim example, a stillborn's legs were removed by researchers in the UK, and the mother was told she couldn't dress the stillborn for the funeral, to conceal from her that the legs had been taken for the project. And that brings us to the end of our list, which means it's time for comment section shoutouts. From top 5 real alien sightings caught on tape, user Disturbed TLman 6007 said they would love to see a video about aliens caught in glue traps. Thanks for indulging my comedy attempts. From top 5 haunted hotels in America people have disappeared from, user CatMom7447 said they love videos like this one. Thank you so much, CatMom. I have a lot of fun talking about haunted places and legends. And finally, from top 5 scary unexplained discoveries found on the far side of the moon, user Jessed3483 said, she's no Lucy, but she's growing on me. Oh, Jess. Thanks folks. It's crazy to think I've been kicking around here for almost a year now. And before I get sentimental, I've been Alexa, your resident Nookie Spooky Girly, and if you enjoyed or tolerated my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more government theories from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.